Hi guys, you are once again rocking with the Pretty Nerd, and I want to say thanks for joining me. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and smash that red subscribe button. Hit that bell for any notifications. You can be first in line. And at the end of this video, if you enjoyed the content, go ahead and smash that like button for me. Now, as you can tell by the title of this video, I am doing a topic today that is very sensitive to myself. It's a video that I've been wanting to do. I just think that I'm finally at a point where I can do the video and make it through it and not fall apart. So I felt like it was very important that I did tell my story and my experience with this topic, because there are a lot of women, unfortunately, that can relate, and sometimes you need someone else to relate to, and I am here for that. So as you can tell by the topic of this video, my son unfortunately did die, and I had to bury him, which is something no parent, I feel like, should ever have to go through. Unfortunately, I know there's a lot of parents who have, and this is my story. So first thing, I am choosing to do this video now because my son's birthday just recently passed on September 13th, and of course it has stirred up a lot of emotions and memories, and God, I just miss him so much. So I felt like this was a good time to memorialize him and tell his story. Saint Andreas Prentice Kennedy was 10 months old when he departed this physical earth. My son was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And I know that that's something that's really weird to hear about a child, a diagnosis given to a child, because that's probably something that you've heard in relation to older people, and I would say complications from other diseases that sometimes causes a person to have congestive heart failure. So unfortunately, it does happen to children, and unfortunately some newborns can have defects that can place them in congestive heart failure. So if you're not familiar with what congestive heart failure is, basically it is when your heart is surrounded by fluid, it gets congested by bodily fluid, and your heart has to then work a lot harder. It can then do a lot less, and it tends to grow abnormally, sometimes enlarge, because of the extra effort is required for the muscles to push through the congestion. So it is a very, very scary condition. It is not always fatal. In adults, sometimes it's not as scary. In children, if the defect that is causing the congestive heart failure does not fix itself, it does require surgery, typically, to save your child. So my 10-month-old, well, actually my newborn, Saint, was born with a VSD, which is a ventricular septic disorder. And what that means is, in the two lower chambers of your heart, they are divided. And I don't know if I would call it cartilage or a muscle or tissue. I think it's a soft tissue that divides those two chambers. So I'm not a doctor, but just based on my son's condition, I tried to learn as much as I could. And so from my understanding, your lower two chambers are separated by tissue, which when you're a newborn is as simple as a flap. And when you take your first breath and you're breathing in oxygen, you or air, that flap normally closes, and the two chambers, the left and right chamber, separates itself when this flap closes, so that the blood, that your oxygenated blood is not getting mixed with the non-oxygenated blood, which is important for breathing and getting oxygen into vital organs. So my son was born with that separation incomplete. So that separation was open. It was a flap that was open, and his blood, the oxygenated blood, was mixing with the non-oxygenated blood, which means that less oxygen was getting to his heart, his body, his brain, everything. And he was premature. I will say that. Let's take it back. Saint was 2 months premature. I did go into labor with Saint at 7 months pregnant. Because typically, which with my first son, I went into labor a month early, about 4 weeks early. I think it was about 3, actually, 3 weeks early. I have a smaller frame, and the way that my doctors and I understand it, simply, it's just you run out of room sometimes for the growing baby. And when you run out of room, I mean, my first son's foot was getting stuck in parts of my body that it just shouldn't have been reaching to. So when both of my births were natural, both of my births were vaginal. None of them were, what's the word? Induced. None of them were induced. So they just kind of came on their own, and they came naturally early. So with him being a preemie and him having the VSD, he was required to stay in the NICU, of course, when you have a premature baby. And when I say we, me and his cardiologist, anticipated that maybe the flap that was held open, because he just wasn't fully formed all the way, would close on its own through natural development, which unfortunately did not happen. So after Saint made it home out of the NICU, we still were dealing with the fact that his blood was mixing because of the VSD in his heart. And what that caused was a lot of other issues. And Saint, because he was premature, also had other physical developmental issues, such as he was deaf. We did believe that he was deaf in one ear based on the hearing test that the newborns get. So it wasn't just one hurdle. Once he made it home, there were a lot of trips, needless to say, to the emergency room, because things just weren't still right. And my understanding from his cardiologist is the goal was to get him open heart surgery. And in order to get the open heart surgery that would manually close that flap and eliminate the problem, in order to get to that surgery, we needed to get his physical weight up. He needed to get to a certain amount of pounds. I can't remember the exact pounds that we had to get him to, but we needed to get his weight up. So he left the NICU at 2 months old, and we expected that his weight would be appropriate for surgery at about 6 months old. And in the meantime, he was on 2 medications that would help his breathing. It was supposed to help. One of them was just a vitamin, one of them was potassium, and one of them was actually for the congestion of the heart, to try to prevent that congestion of the heart. And of course, we had to watch his diet, to not take in anything that would cause him to retain too much liquid, such as salty foods and things like that, which was really hard because of the diet that we had to maintain for him so that he wouldn't retain too much fluid on his chest. It caused him to be constipated a lot, so he dealt with that. And because of the extreme constipation, because of all of the medication, my son also had a hernia in his stomach as well, that was going to require surgery. So Saint was dealing with quite a bit on a daily basis of discomfort. But the goal was just to kind of keep him as healthy as possible, to get to the surgery at 6 months old approximately. We actually beat the weight, and it's a shame that I can't remember the exact pounds, but I do remember that we got to that weight at 3 months old. And it was very fast. The kid ate a lot. And we got to that weight at 3 months old, and for some reason his cardiologist still didn't see the need to write the order for the surgery yet. And from what I understand, there's a lot of moms who's had children with this same issue, with the VSD, and had to have the open heart surgery to close it manually. And the surgeries happened early, before the first year of life, within 3 months. So 4 months old, I talked to one lady who had a child who got it done younger. You just want to make sure they're at a weight that they can recover and handle that type of surgery the best that they can, because it is open heart surgery, you know. So I understood at the time, or tried to, and we had weekly echocardiograms, which became difficult for me because at that time I was a single mom of two. Now, I already had my son who was over a year old, almost 2 years old, and I had my new baby, Saint, as well. And I also literally have zero family that helped me with Saint. I did have a little more help with Sir when he was a newborn, but when Saint was born, I literally had no help. If I give you a little bit of background on the situation, Saint's dad was kind of like, I'm just being real with you guys. You're watching my YouTube. I try to be honest. Saint's dad was a one weekend stand, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, but it wasn't supposed to be a relationship. So he was excited. He wanted his son. He was there the best that he could, but I did not know him well, and he was not mentally stable. Actually became like abnormally obsessed with me, and I had to separate myself from him. He was hiding outside of my apartments at night, and I think he called my house at the most was maybe 300 times one day, maybe more. It was insane. So for my safety and my children's safety, I completely had to separate myself from him. And my older son's father was dealing with some issues in another state. You know how that goes. So I was alone, and I had zero family helping me out, calling, checking on me, babysitting, anything, nothing. So it was really, really hard. And I didn't really know about income-based housing. I think all the lists may have been full when I finally did learn about it. So bottom line is I needed a job, and I did get a really good job. I worked for a hospital, needless to say. I worked for a bunch of doctors, and I had a full-time schedule. I was actually a lead position. So I worked in several hospitals, and trying to maintain that life and weekly doctor's appointments. I was literally taking my son from daycare to doctor's appointments on my lunch break, and then dropping back off at daycare, and then go back to work, and then pick him up and try to get some rest. And taking care of a sick baby is a lot, let alone 2 kids. Not 2 sick babies, but one of them sick, one of them not, and just 2 boys at all. It was a lot. And I did my best, but I do feel like his cardiologist was not understanding at all. And I think that honestly the relationship with myself and his cardiologist is probably what ultimately led to my son's death. And what I mean by that is his cardiologist was Dr. Christopher Bugnitz at Dayton Children's Hospital in Dayton, Ohio. And from the beginning, I don't think that he believed that I had no support. And for all of you out there that have a lot of support, be thankful and appreciative, but also understand that there are people out here that have children. There is a such thing as people having zero support and trying to do their best completely on their own. And I am one of those people. I don't have a mom. My dad is dead. I didn't have family support. And so scheduling his weekly appointments became extremely difficult with his doctor, who I think when I would say, okay, I literally work from 8, I think I had to clock in by 8 a.m., drop the boys off at 7, and I didn't get off till 6, which was the exact same business hours he had. Um, Needless to say, I couldn't just take off work. Like, there was no one else who was going to pay my bills or take care of us. And at 6 months, once Saint was at the weight, of course he was over the weight that Dr. Bugnitz required to write the order for the heart surgery to fix everything. I explained to him that it was becoming difficult for me to make the pre-scheduled appointments when his office would write appointments last minute, and they would call me and tell me those appointment times. I couldn't just take off work instantly. I had to kind of have those dates ahead of time, and he wasn't necessarily willing to kind of do that so that I could have, the dates worked out. And he literally told me that he did not want to see my son for the next 6 months. And my son was about 6 months old at that time. And he didn't want to see him again. He would fill his medications, write the orders for his medications, but because he felt like I was just being extremely picky with the dates and times of his appointments, he got frustrated and told me that he didn't want to see my son. My response to that was, okay, well, I'll just take him to another cardiologist, that maybe would work with me and understand my situation. And, at no time did my cardiologist ever tell me that about like the Ronald McDonald House or any living type of situations when you have a child that could die any day and you're trying to keep them alive, and you can't pay your bills because you can't work because you're the only parent. Like, he offered me no solutions except for I should call CPS if I can't handle it. And I have pretty good jobs and I take care of my children very well, or at least, to the best that I can, which is typically, I think is up to standard. I just really just wanted to schedule dates, and he refused to see my son after my request of that. And when I said that I would see other doctors, he told me that they were his partners and his colleagues, and he's sure that, I can anticipate the same reaction from them. Basically saying that he's going to give them a heads up before I can even call them. And I know how doctor circles run. I know it was quite possible. So I just continued to call his office. And I would call every week, at least once a week, maybe twice a week, trying to schedule an appointment on the days that I could get off during the weeks, working with my boss. And I never spoke with Dr. Busnick ever again. I only spoke with his nurse, and she would only tell me no, that day doesn't work. When I would offer a day, okay, well, what about Thursday of this week? No, he's not doing clinicals that day. No, he's actually going on vacation that day. No, he's not back from vacation. Dr. Busnick never saw my son again, and he died at 10 months, or almost 10 months. And the night that my son died was very crazy. I had went to see an old wife of my dad, someone that he married years ago, and we kept a relationship, and I went in to visit, and Saint was actually more cheerful that day. Some days, it was rough. You can tell he was struggling to breathe. We had to go to ER some nights. That night he was very calm. I remember my mom saying that he looked around a lot, didn't cry. It was the best baby ever. He never cried, unless he was in pain or discomfort, And that night I remember we stopped by the pharmacy. I had to refill his prescription. And we got home, and he seemed really tired. He did. And I remember talking to him, and I told him that Mommy was going to give you a bath tonight, but you look so sleepy. You look really tired, Saint. And I'm just going to put your night clothes on you and get you really comfortable, and you just can chill tonight, and we'll take a bath in the morning. And the next morning, my first son actually woke me up. He jumped on me, which is very abnormal. And he jumped on me and was trying to wake me up. And once I woke up, I remember telling him to stop jumping and making all that noise. You're going to wake up your brother. And I went to look over and see if his brother was waking up because of the noise, and he wasn't. And I thought initially, well, that's good. You didn't wake your brother up. And then immediately thought, I didn't even see his arm move. And Saint, even in his sleep, if you would make loud noises around him, you would see his little fist jump up. He may stay asleep, but he would react to the noise because I'm sure he didn't get really good sleep all the time because of his discomfort and breathing and so forth. And I noticed that he didn't move. And I remember being afraid to go closer, but I went. And I grabbed him. And I looked. And I noticed all on the bed where he was laying was wet all around him. And he was still wrapped exactly how I wrapped him when I laid him down. Like he hadn't moved at all much. And I looked, and his face didn't jump. He didn't kind of move his eyes in his sleep. And I remember just saying, no, no, no. Like, no, 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 this is not happening. And, but it was. And I looked closer, and I could see a stain of liquid that had dried up, and it was red. And I think that's when I began to freak out. And I grabbed him, and when I held him, I thought that I still felt warm. I thought that I still felt his body still warm. I thought I still had a chance, so I started CPR. But I could tell his leg, he had a leg that also kind of didn't turn all the way right. And so I could tell as I was doing CPR that that little leg was stiff. And as soon as I pushed maybe a third time slightly on his little chest, fluid, a bunch of fluid came up. So I knew then that it was over. But I called 911 immediately, and they came really fast, and they were not very nice, but they didn't know what to think, just like I didn't know what to think. And yeah, so I dealt with questioning, a short interrogation, and then life, then funeral planning. So all the time as a parent, I think about if I could go back, what I would do different, and you know how, of course, it's been my fault a billion times in my mind and replaying. I've been to the groups and therapy. It's never a pain that you're ever gonna get over. I'll never get over it. It's actually shocking that I can kind of make it through this story. I'm really proud of myself, actually. So I hope that if unfortunately you have experienced this, or you're watching to try to understand someone else's pain, that helps. I guess if I had to do it all over again, I would have definitely gotten him a different cardiologist. And I'm positive that his death was preventable. I, I remember his last echocardiogram with his cardiologist. The cardiologist said that he noticed his heart was enlarging, but still wanted to keep trying the medication, and I couldn't understand that. And I was not comfortable with questioning him. I did not feel welcome to ask too many questions before I would frustrate him. Um, and I wish that I didn't take his threat seriously. I wish that maybe I would have just tried it with his colleagues and tried to find another option and a second opinion. Because I definitely am sure that my son's death was preventable. Even if he would have taken any of my calls or given us an appointment, he maybe would have noticed before he died from the heart attack, or, you know, his cause of death is just simply complications from congestive heart failure. So, every day it does not get better, but you'll learn to function. I remember plenty of days where my other son was literally the only reason I wanted to be here anymore. I withered away physically. I literally didn't want to move a lot of the days. A lot of other crazy stuff happened during that time as well, which is like a whole nother video, but like literally only like one of my friends was there for me. Devin, shout out to Devin. He actually came to my funeral and spoke to my son's funeral, sorry, and spoke. So shout out to you, D. Thank you. Thanks to the family that came to Saint's funeral. One of my sisters, a couple of my cousins. Thanks a lot, because that really mattered to me a whole lot. Actually, a couple of my sisters, I think two, Deshonda and Ashley, and then a ton of my cousins. I really appreciate that so much. So, because I was having a hard time holding on during that time. Definitely was. So, thanks. And a lot of people ask me if I'm ever going to sue the doctor or try to sue children. So I don't know. Leave me a comment. What do you think? You know what I mean? I don't really know if it's worth the drama, and doctors have all type of lawyer money that I don't have. So if you think I have a case, just comment below. Tell me what you think. But yeah, I don't know what to say to any parent that is dealing with it, because I'm still what you call dealing with it. And probably will for the rest of my life. So I don't know if I'm the person to give advice. But therapy never hurts. Talking to someone that is professionally trained and listening never hurts. Always helps. Watching more videos like you're doing right now is what helped me. Listening to other moms who got to this point of being able to make a video without just like complete waterworks. I never thought that that day would come. So watching other people get there will help you get there. Don't feel bad that other people's sympathy doesn't help. It's not going to help. Telling someone, especially if you don't understand, that you understand what they go through is not going to help. And don't feel bad for feeling that way. There's no book on coping with this, and I mean, actually there probably is, but it's not going to help. It's just internal. It's just you and your child spirit and your memories and your ability to cope and move on, and you learn a whole lot of abilities you may not have known you had, and a lot of tools that you'll use, new tools to coping. So it will make you stronger, and you will thank God that you just had the ability to bring forth life and have that experience. And whatever that spirit, that child spirit, it just needed to move on. And I think that once we come to that place of understanding, a lot of the what ifs and whys and how do I's, and it just kind of, I don't know, you just kind of becomes obsolete, and you just enjoy their memory, and you try to cherish those moments and just remember and, love. And that's the key. So I hope this video gave a little more insight on what happened with Saint. Any questions, any comments, go ahead and drop it down below. I did eventually start eating again and doing things again. I think the key is to go outside and talk. That's the key. So keep finding reasons to keep going, guys. If you have experienced this, I am so sorry, but you will be able to function through it eventually. Thank you guys for listening while I share. That's a very important story to me, so I appreciate it. And God bless.